Hi, I'm George, and this is Crash Course West in the World, and today we'll be talking about Pearl Harbor. The attack on Pearl Harbor was an act of terrorism that brought movement in the U.S. to get involved in World War II. The Japanese didn't just bomb Pearl Harbor in hopes to keep the U.S. out of the war, but their aim was to gain control over the Pacific, where the U.S. had control over precious resources. The Germans knew their expansion of land, or Lebensraum, would be destroyed if America got involved in the war because Hitler learned in the First World War not to get the U.S. involved. America. On December 7th, 1941, Japan declared war on the U.S. 3 days later, December 11th, Germany also declared war. Hitler didn't know yet, but it was the beginning of the end for him and the Nazis.
George, how does this relate to World War II and the Nazis?
You see, World War II wasn't just the Nazis and the Holocaust. It was the war between Japan and America in the Pacific what truly made it a world war. It brought the attention of countries all around the world and created a massive industrial war. Oh my poop. During the First World War, Japan supplied troops to the Allies on the Western Front, but when it came to creating the Treaty of Versailles, Japan played little part, and in some way that offended them. After the Great War, most countries that had put any resources in were in serious economic problems. When the stock market crashed in 1929, it brought the Great Depression, and it was harder for Japan because they did not have a lot of resources to fall back on. At the same time, the Japanese were wishing to expand their empire. The island of Japan was small and the population was growing, as well as the mouths to feed, because that's what happens when the population grows, right? So they looked for space for their growing population and headed to their neighbor, China. In 1937, they set their eyes on Manchuria, which is China, and began the bloody invasion. The U.S. did not like Japan's aggression towards China, so we started to cut our economic sanctions towards Japan. Japan was no longer able to buy any natural resources from the U.S. Those natural resources fueled their navy, which was their main military power, leaving them with one option: to take over the U.S. islands in the Pacific and important trade routes such as the Philippines and the Indonesian trade route. The Indonesian trade route is a network of sea routes that link the east and the west from the west coast of Japan through the islands of Indonesia and the Philippines, around India to the Middle East, and across the Mediterranean to Europe. They were important to the Japanese because it gave them an economic advantage over the Pacific Islands if they were going to take them over. In order to do this, they had to start with the most devastating attack possible on the U.S., and that was to bomb the U.S. Pacific Fleet that was based in Pearl Harbor. On December 7, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor on the island of Oahu, Operation Owl by Japan is what they called it, and we called it Operation Z, was declared by the Emperor of Japan, Hirohito. Hirohito was made crown prince at the age of 15, and he was Japan's longest reigning monarch. This dude was like a dinosaur. He ruled Japan for almost 60 years, and he was the man that approved the attack on Pearl Harbor and continued ruling through the late 80s. So this guy had influence in Japan for a long time after World War II. Hirohito. Oh, there's an airplane. What's on it? Okay. What time was the attack commenced? How long did it last? If I remember correctly, it was 7:55 to be exact, and the attack lasted roughly 2 hours. Mitsuo Fuchida, this dude rocking the aviators right here, was a Japanese captain in the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service and a bomber aviator in the Japanese Navy before
and during World War II. And
just before 8 a.m. on Hawaiian time on December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor from 6 aircraft carriers. They attacked with 353 fighter planes, bombers, and torpedo bombers in 2 different waves. All 8 of the U.S. Navy battleships were damaged, with 4 sunk: the USS West Virginia and the USS California, the USS Oklahoma, which had capsized, and the USS Arizona's forward magazine exploded and killed most of its crew, which was almost half of the people that were killed at Pearl Harbor, or the servicemen. The West Virginia and California sunk in shallows, so they were able to be recovered and went back out to seas again later in the war. USS Tennessee was the most damaged, but it was the most damaged battleship that was able to be repaired and was quickly seaworthy within a month and back in service in early 1942. The USS Maryland and the USS Pennsylvania were both minorly damaged and ready to go later in December. The USS Nevada was the only ship moving during the attack, so its crew kept her that way and prevented her from sinking. And also the USS Nevada was in dry dock at the moment of the attack, so it took little damage from torpedo bombers and whatnot, and there was also a torpedo, a destroyer next to it, also in dry dock, and a bomb hit that, and shrapnel from it is what damaged the Nevada.
Richmond K. Turner, a U.S. Navy admiral who warned that the Navy should be on high alert status and have security increased at Pearl Harbor, but recommendations were just only implemented a little bit, and this could have tremendously helped the U.S. for fighting back.
Let's take it to the thought bubble.
Woo! And today's thought bubble is Pearl Harbor. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. Japan needed to leave 2 weeks before the attack, and during that time they kept communication with the United States and were basically just telling lies, trying to keep the peace. The day after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed a joint session of Congress. His speech that day, which summoned a nation to war, would become among the most iconic in American history, particularly Roosevelt's famous line describing the outrageous attack the prior day. On November 26, 1941, a Japanese task force of 54 vessels, the striking force and 6 aircraft carriers departed from northern Japan en route to a position northwest of Hawaii. No man can tame a tiger into a kitten by stroking it. There can be no appeasement with ruthlessness. There can be no reasoning with an incendiary bomb. We know now a nation can have peace with the Nazis only at the price of total surrender.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. went into military mode. Everything was questioned and martial law went into effect on the U.S. Pacific Islands. People did not think the curfews and blackouts would last too long, but they didn't end until 1945.
FDR, who spent most of his presidency, actually all of it, in a wheelchair, he implemented economic penalties that angered Japan. He also requested war declaration after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941.
Almost 100,000 Japanese were affected, and 80,000 of them were American citizens. These locations were based in Utah, California, Arizona, Wyoming, Arkansas, and Colorado. In the camps, there was food rationing and living conditions were poor. Some prisoners were released early if they agreed to join the army, but only a small amount agreed. These camps lasted until late 1945 and after the U.S. repaid the families who had lost land during the confinement.
Here are some simple pictures. You can see they lived in close quarters. It was like a neater Auschwitz minus the killing.
So with that being said, America obviously won the war in the Pacific because America. And this has been Crash Course West in the World with George. Thanks for watching and have a good day. And now for a thought bubble. That's a tongue twister. Not really, but it is for me. Yeah. Yeah, that is a true fact because I friggin' wrote it and got it off the internet. God dang. It was. Son of a. Because America, this has been Crash Course West in the World with George and. Have a good day and thanks for watching. Or vice versa. Many Japanese citizens in the U.S. were taken to concentration camps. Oh, no. Whoa. That was funny.
Oh, it's so good. Okay.
No, I just stopped it.
I know.